Howdy everyone, it's me Zombie, and today we're going to be working on the robot from Stranding. This was so fun to make, and what's really cool about it is that it's all adjustable, so you can kind of move it however, and all the little pedals move as well, so he can be a little tiny robot with a little robot face, or he can have big jazz hands or jazz pedals, whatever those things are. But this was a lot of fun. It was really different from what I usually make. So if you want to make a Death Stranding robot of your own, or if you're just curious to see how I made this thing, then keep on watching. Welcome back to the crafting table. As you can see, I have this chewed up piece of paper that used to be my patterns for Mr. Flappy. A certain cat ate this, but luckily these are still salvageable. I mean, he chewed that side of the paper, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut these out and transfer them onto some EVA foam. By the way, these are the little like flower pedal bits on the robot. I just figured I'd start with those since they seem to be the most straightforward bits. And as you can tell, these are hand-drawn patterns. I just looked at some reference pictures of the flower petal parts of the robot and just transferred them onto a piece of paper. For the little flappy bits, I'm just gonna be tracing them onto some 6mm EVA foam. And I'm tracing each pattern twice, except for this little rectangle one. Only need one of those. Now I'm gonna cut these pieces out using a utility knife. Now while I'm cutting these pieces out here, I just want to take a second to thank all my patrons over on patreon.com/zombiesworkshop. They are so amazing and supportive, and I wouldn't be able to do all this fun stuff without them. So thank you all so much. And if you want to join us over there, we have a pretty good time. You're going to see all my projects early. You can see early videos. You can see exclusive lens clips and all kinds of other stuff. But if that's not your cup of tea and you're just into watching me make stuff kind of on YouTube as it comes out, that's okay too. And I just want to thank you for being here too. Now that I have all of our little flower petal bits here, I'm gonna go ahead and mark some of the details that are going to be cut and rotary tooled into these guys right here. So I'm gonna use my shiny marker and take care of that right now. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that worked. So what I just did is I put all the dot details onto one real quick with my little pen tool, and then I sandwiched them both inward together and kind of pressed them, and then when I opened them, they made a mirror image of the pattern that I wanted on each one. So cool to know that that works. Ta-da! So I have this really nifty foam dowel that I got at TNT Cosplay Supply, and I just think these things are so cool. I didn't even know really what I wanted to use them for. I just got a bunch of them in a bunch of different sizes. And I actually think this will be the perfect size to put in the middle of my little flappy flower robot. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit of this off so I can have that nice round surface. All right, and there we have it. I really like that. Now I would eventually love to make this into something electronic to where it can actually flap like it does in the game. But for now, I'm gonna kind of build this as a statue, but I'm gonna make sure that everything is kind of easily removable. So when I do that, I can just kind of take this part apart and put in the electronics. So to do that, I have some multi-purpose wire. This is just wire I like to use for sculpting. It's easily bendable, but it's also really sturdy, and it, stays in place and lets you, manually bend it like this. So I'm gonna be using that to make a frame for my flower and to cut and kind of bend this wire a little bit easier so my hands don't get so dang tired. I have this little wire cutter and bender tool here. So for each petal wire, I'm gonna cut it about 7 inches long, which may be a bit long, but it's better to have too much than to not have enough. Now that these are all cut out, I'm gonna go ahead and bend them into shape. They're pretty much just like a V shape. Actually, I should be using this, shouldn't I? I can just very gently use this to bend the wire. I'll do the same with each piece. I'm gonna set these aside for now and continue working on my little petals. Now behind the flower is this other big head part. I'm gonna go ahead and create that as well. I'm just gonna sketch a pattern here real quick, just looking at my reference photo. And after I finish drawing it, I cut it out. Wow! Now this part, I'm going to try out some L200, which cosplaysupplies.com sent to me. So I am going to trace this little part onto right here. And this piece actually looks a bit thicker, so I'm gonna trace it twice. And this is the first time I'm actually ever using L200. It's definitely a lot squishier than EVA, which is interesting. So there's that little basic part right there. Since I have these two pieces cut out and my contact cement, I'm gonna go ahead and glue them together. And I like putting a second layer on this, especially with this L200. I'm seeing that it is soaking up a lot of the glue. So after the first layer of glue is pretty much almost dry, I'm doing a second layer. I think this will help it stick together a lot better. Now for the indented line details that I've marked on my petals, I'm just gonna use my craft blade and just very lightly score them. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when I use a heat gun on them, they're gonna open up and become really visible lines. Now for all these indented details here, I'm gonna be using a stone grinding bit on my Foredom Rotary tool. And now that these pieces have their indentions on them, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this little block piece. You can see I glued it together now and the glue has dried, but some of the edges don't meet up, so I'm just gonna clean them up with this knife. I'm gonna finish cleaning up these edges with my rotary tool as well. Foredom was nice enough to send me one of their rotary tools for free, so I am so grateful that I'm able to use this on a project like this one and for all of my projects to come. Now that I'm done sculpting this, I'm gonna do a once or twice over with my heat gun here to see if I can get rid of all the little fuzzies. So going over this with the heat gun got rid of most of the fuzzies. And when it gets really hot, it starts to like stick and actually kind of get really gooey. So you do have to be extra careful with it. I think the best use for something like this would be like a prop or part of a costume that needs a little bit more movement, because this is definitely a lot squishier than your EVA foam. And the final test for this will be to see how it paints. Now I'm gonna take my wire V pieces that I made earlier and start adding foam onto them. The pieces that go on either side of the wire look like hinge pieces, and I'm not gonna glue the EVA foam together at the hinges, just so the hinges can still move around and I can adjust those petals however I want to later. Now that I have all my separate head pieces assembled, I'm gonna stick everything together using contact cement and pushing the galvanized wire through the foam. This is when the top half of the robot starts looking a little bit more like my reference photos. All right, so I'm back again, and here is my little guy all done, my little like flower head of the Flappy Bot. And you can see since I put wire in it, you can kind of adjust it in different ways, bend it all different. And I also put some wire in the middle of this little base piece right here as well, just to kind of help it be a little bit more sturdy. So now that I have this base part done, I'm gonna go ahead and build an armature for the rest of the Flappy Bot. So here's how I'm shaping the wireframe. Just same old galvanized wire that I was using before, and I'm just kind of bending it into the approximate shape I'm seeing in my reference photos here. And for the frame, I'm deciding to do 2 wires that I'm going to be taping together. You could also really just like bend it back around without trimming it again, but I really just want this to be extra sturdy because I know it's going to be supporting this little headpiece as well. For the foam details around the frame, I'm using these TNT Cosplay Supply dowels and just cutting them in half. And since this is going in the middle, I'm gonna cut a little trench in these just so I can fit it around the wire a little bit easier. And how I'm doing that is I'm just using my X-Acto blade and very carefully scoring the middle of this. And I'm kind of going at an angle, about like a 45-degree angle probably. And then I'm gonna do the exact same again on the opposite side. My goal here is to do this at about another 45-degree angle, so there will be a little trench in the middle. now I'm gonna try to pull out the material from the middle. Yay, it's working! And now that I have these trenches cut out, I can go ahead and start fitting them around my frame. So now that I have all my dowels on my frame, I'm gonna start adding more details. I'm using some smaller foam dowels to make some joint details, and 2mm foam to make some of the details on top. I'm using a silver marker and marking where all my indents need to be. Then I'm using my rotary tool to press in all of those marks. So here's what the frame looks like after it's all decorated. Now I'm going to attach the frame to the flower robot part. I have my wire dowels that I pushed in, and I also have a layer of barge on both sides, so I'm going to go ahead and stick them together. And now we have everything together and fully constructed for the little flower flappy bot. So what is next now is I'm going to prime this with some Plasti Dip, and then we can start painting it. Here's what Flappy Bot looks like after it's been Plasti Dipped, and now it's all ready to paint. I'll be using this assortment of Tamiya, Rust-Oleum, and Vallejo game colors to paint Flappy Bot. I'm going to start off with the little flower petals or face bits that are on the front here. The front of them are white, so I'm going to go ahead and start painting them white using my white Tamiya paint that I just squished out right here. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to my paint just to help dilute it a little bit, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start painting. And since I am painting white on a black surface, I definitely am gonna need to do more than one coat. But we'll get there. It's just gonna take some patience. After putting a couple layers of my white paint onto here, I'm gonna let this dry before adding a couple more layers. And while this is drying, I'm gonna start adding my dusty yellow color on the frame and some of the details on the top near the head of the robot.
Yellow paint is yellow treat, no yellow treat, thank you next lol.
So after a few coats of the base colors, here's what we got so far. Pretty satisfied with how it's looking, and by the way, the L200 foam actually paints almost the exact same as the EVA. Again, it's just a little bit squishier, so you may have some creasing, but other than that, I didn't notice much of a difference. So in case you're wondering, that's how it paints. For the indented black pieces, I'm just gonna use my black Vallejo paint. And for the white flower petals of the robot, I'm using my Tamiya gunmetal paint and just adding a little bit of scrapage along the edges with a paintbrush. And to highlight some of the ridges on my black frame detail, I'm taking some white paint and using a small brush and pressing it into some of the edges. Just added all the little silvery, crispy, chipped paint bits all over this. And they are very bold, which is cool, but I definitely want to tone it down a little bit. So next, I'm gonna weather this thing using some browns and some blacks. And that will help tone down some of the metal bits and make this piece look more lived in, because a lot of things in Death Stranding look really nasty, dirty, grimy. So I want to make this match the rest of the cosplay. So now that it's weathered, here's what the robot looks like when it's all done. I had a blast kind of engineering how this was all going to come together, and I think it came out looking really cool. The really satisfying part is when I can attach it to the rest of my Death Stranding cosplay. I really can't wait, but until then, I'll just have to imagine myself as Sam Porter. Like, I also love how he kind of like bobs and moves and has his own personality. This week's featured makers include Jared S.D. Evans. He showed me this Star-Lord cosplay that he's been working on, and I think it looks awesome. You did such a great job. He said that he followed some of my Star-Lord tutorials to make this, and you did fantastic. Thank you so much for showing me your hard work, Jarrett. Iria88 showed me her Atom armor that she built. I love the colors. I love how this is made. I love the finish, how shiny it is. You look fantastic in this, so thank you so much for showing me. Damian Webb showed me his Saber Nero cosplay. I love how this is put together. I love the colors from your wig all the way down to your shoes. You look amazing. Thank you so much for showing me. As you guys can see, I love seeing what you create, whether it's a cosplay, a prop, or a work in progress. I would love to see what you're working on. It really does make my day. Also, if you want to use the hashtag Maker of the Week, that guarantees that I will be able to see it because the DM system on some social media is not the best. Sometimes I miss stuff. Sometimes I lose track of stuff, so I am very sorry. But using that hashtag Maker of the Week, I will be sure to see it because I want to see every single one. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video, consider hitting that subscribe button because I would love to see you back next time. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.